Hello, I hope you're all safe and well during this time. In today's webinar, we will be looking at some of the changes that came into effect this year with regards to extended producer responsibility regulations across the world. My name is Lisa Dean, and I'm the Head of Global Compliance at Sphera EC4P, and I'm joined by my colleague James Pearson, who is the EC4P Product Director. So we'll start by giving you a brief introduction to our company, and then we'll be focusing on regulatory changes in two countries, Singapore and Brazil. And then we'll take a look at the extended product scopes in South Korea and Nova Scotia, Canada, which may bring a lot more producers into obligation of the laws in these countries. And then we'll take a look at proposed amendments and regulations in a handful of other countries as listed here. And then James will take you through a demonstration of our online reporting platform, ec4p.com, which will help you maintain EPR compliance at a global level. So to introduce you to Sphera, we're a global provider of integrated risk management software and information services. Our key service areas are environmental health and safety, operational risk management, and product stewardship. Sphera EC4P is part of the product stewardship service area, which specialises in product compliance, recycling compliance, CE marking, regulatory content, chemical and hazardous material management, and SDS authoring and consulting. So to provide you with a brief introduction of Sphera EC4P's industry background, we have extensive experience in WEEE, batteries, packaging, RoHS and REACH. For example, in 2003, we wrote the UK government guidelines on the RoHS and WEEE directives to explain practical compliance requirements to UK companies. And in 2007, we were the first organisation to gain authorisation to operate a UK government-approved WEEE compliance scheme, B2B WEEE scheme. So our global WEEE batteries and packaging services were launched in 2013. And in 2014, our web-based registration and reporting platform, ec4p.com, was established, which James will provide more detail on later in the webinar. And last year, in 2019, that's when we joined Sphera. So as I mentioned, we'll begin by looking at the regulatory changes in Brazil and Singapore. And then I'll provide an overview of EPR regulation amendments in other regions. So just a note, we're not going to be covering changes in the EU during this webinar. We're just looking at non-EU or global countries. As many global regions implement EPR regulations, we're seeing lots of amendments and new regulations. And these changes can be quite a challenge for producers to track and monitor. So in Singapore, the Resource Sustainability Act was published in September last year. It covers e-waste, batteries and packaging. And associated legal texts have also been published to bring the requirements of the Resource Sustainability Act into force. These legal texts cover the implementation schedule, the scope of products covered under the Act, and also allow offences under the Act to be compounded by an authorised officer. To take a look at the scope of E covered under the Act, the scope is broken down into consumer and non-consumer products. I won't read through the entire list, but as you can see, products such as televisions and IT equipment, large household appliances, mobility devices and light sources are considered to be consumer use products. And non-consumer products include professional use IT equipment, such as printers, servers and network hubs, and photovoltaic panels and specified single-phase lamps also fall into this non-consumer product category. Under the Act, consumer products are referred to as products brought for private consumption. Dual-use products, which are supplied to both households and businesses, are also considered to be consumer use products. There are different requirements placed on producers of consumer and non-consumer products, which I'll cover a little later on. The Resource Sustainability Act covers portable batteries, which can be defined as sealed, can be hand carried without difficulty, and is neither an automotive nor industrial battery. Batteries for electric vehicles and e-motorcycles are covered under consumer e-vehicle batteries, and non-consumer batteries include lithium-ion or nickel metal hydride industrial batteries and non-consumer electric vehicle batteries. So batteries designed for compatibility with specific products or systems only are exempt from the Act. So this is integrated batteries that are a component of another product and not designed to be removed by the end user. So packaging, which falls in scope of the Act, includes primary packaging that contains the product which is sold to the end user, service packaging or point of sale packaging, such as carrier bags, secondary packaging, such as paperboard that group drinks bottles together, and tertiary packaging used in transport, such as pallets. So there are a number of exemption thresholds under the Act. For the IT equipment listed here, the annual put on the market threshold is 10 tonnes, but there are no thresholds for servers. For large appliances, excluding mobility devices, the threshold is 100 tonnes, and for lamps, it's 3 tonnes. For portable batteries, there is a 3-tonne threshold, and hybrid and electric vehicle batteries have a 15-tonne threshold, and there's no threshold for industrial batteries. So parties with an annual turnover of 10 million Singapore dollars or more will be obligated under the Act, but small enterprises that fall underneath this threshold will qualify for an exemption. So what are the requirements under the Act? From the 1st of January 2020, producers placing consumer use products onto the market need to register with the National Environment Agency and keep accurate records of the quantity and weights of products that they place on the market. In the second phase of implementation, which is due to happen in 2021, producers will be required to join a licensed producer responsibility scheme. It's anticipated that the National Environment Agency will appoint just one producer responsibility scheme to cover consumer use products. For producers placing non-consumer products onto the market, the requirements introduced in January this year are the same as those placed on producers of consumer equipment. However, in 2021, producers of non-consumer products will be required to finance the collection of end-of-life equipment, arrange for the disposal of this equipment using a licensed recycler, keep records of the collection and recycling process, and submit these to the National Environment Agency. So nearer the time that the second phase of the requirements are implemented in 2021, we'll have better understanding of whether these requirements are to be met on an individual basis or whether producers will be able to contract with compliance organisations. Packaging producers will have to register with the National Environment Agency in 2020, and from 2021, producers of packaging will be required to collect data and report to the National Environment Agency on the volumes of packaging they place on the market in Singapore. This data should be reported by packaging material type. Producers will also be required to submit waste management plans, or 3R plans, to the National Environment Agency. The type of 3R plans that producers may consider using are packaging reduction, packaging collection for reuse and recycling, consumer or industry outreach related to packaging 3Rs, use of recycled content in the packaging material, and improvements in recyclability of packaging. An extended producer responsibility regime for waste packaging is planned to be implemented by 2025. And in terms of enforcement, the Act stipulates that non-complying producers will face fines of up to 10,000 Singapore dollars or a prison sentence of up to 3 months, or both. Onto the regulations in Brazil. Decree number 10240 came into effect on the 13th of February of this year. It establishes rules for mandatory reverse logistics systems for household electrical and electronic products and their components. The decree applies to electrical and electronic products for household use whose operation requires a maximum electric supply of 240 volts. Annex 1 of the decree is an extensive list of household items that fall in scope of the e-waste regime. However, this list is not exhaustive, so other electrical and electronic products may be added in periodic reviews. Household use is defined as personal, residential, or family use exclusively by individuals, but the decree also allows companies or management entities to receive waste electrical or electronic products with characteristics similar to those of domestic use, but discarded by micro or small businesses. The products listed here are not considered to be in scope of the decree. Batteries and lamps are subject of their own reverse logistics systems, which are not covered by this particular decree. Manufacturers are required to establish and implement reverse logistics systems for their electrical and electronic waste, independent of the public collection system. Manufacturers must report the weight of products placed on the market annually to the Performance Monitoring Group. Communication and environmental education plans are to explain the implementation of the reverse logistics system to consumers and stakeholders throughout the supply chain. And it should encourage consumers to dispose of end-of-life equipment and packaging at allocated collection points. The communication plan should also include information such as how to dispose of end-of-life electrical and electronic equipment appropriately, a reminder that private information should be removed from the equipment before disposal, and also give the location of the collection points. Manufacturers should also publish information on the reverse logistics system on their website, and the communication plan can be executed via a number of different channels, from printed media to television and radio and different events. Importers of covered products are required to participate in a reverse logistics system and provide details of the person responsible for that system within their import declaration, which they submit to the authorities. So distributors, they must encourage retailers in their supply chain to either join a collective management entity or participate individually in the reverse logistics system. They also need to set up or finance consolidation points, and they need to verify compliance with the Ministry of Environment when requested. Specific penalties for non-compliance are not specified under the decree, but these will be set out in separate legislation. So if we just take a look at other EPR developments globally, from January 2020, the product scope of the Act for Resource Recycling in South Korea now includes 23 new products as listed here, and solar panels will be added to the scope in 2023. The original scope of products includes items such as TVs, IT equipment, such as laptops, printers, audio equipment, white goods, and batteries. There is no distinction between household and professional use products in South Korea. Obligated producers must submit an implementation plan to authorities, meet collection targets, and label products as specified under the Act. And just to note, there are some small producer exemptions under the Act for small producers with an annual turnover below 1 billion South Korea won, and importers with an annual turnover below 300 million South Korea won. So in Canada last year, the Ministry of Environment, Nova Scotia, announced amendments to the Solid Waste Resource Management Regulations, which has expanded the list of obligated electronic products effective from the 1st of January this year, with a corresponding landfill ban for these products, which came into effect on the 1st of March this year. And the products which have been added to the scope are listed on this slide. Producers of these products will now need to register as a steward with the EPRA in Nova Scotia and pay an environmental handling fee to the EPRA based on the number of units sold and distributed in this province. Stewards can recover the environmental handling fees that they pay to the EPRA by charging the environmental handling fee directly to their customer. And a brief overview of other developments. Producers should monitor the regulations in Australia as under the National Waste Policy Plan. A 2020 deadline has been set to establish a producer stewardship investment fund to set up industry-led recycling schemes, including for batteries and e-waste. Batteries have appeared on the product list for product stewardship consideration in Australia since 2013. So that's definitely one to look out for. In New Zealand, the government has proposed a mandatory product stewardship under the Waste Minimisation Act for 6 priority products, and these products include electrical and electronic products, batteries and packaging. On the 23rd of December, in China, a draft of the solid waste law was published. With regards to EPR, it's stated that producers shall establish or commission a new WEEE system. In Colombia, a draft WEEE decree was published for comment in 2019. The decree specifies WEEE producer and retailer registration requirements, and if approved, it would replace the existing WEEE management regulation that's currently in force in Colombia. In November 2019, Peru approved a special WEEE management regime, which revises the existing WEEE regime in this country. Producers are now required to submit plans to the Ministry of Environment, finance collection of WEEE, and meet specified collection targets. In New York State, 2 bills on packaging EPR have been published. They would require producers of packaging to finance the collection and recycling of packaging, and minimum recycled content requirements would also be set for certain products. In Maine, a draft packaging EPR bill would require producers to finance at least 80% of the cost of associated recycling packaging. Large packaging producers would pay into a packaging stewardship fund, and producers who do not participate in the EPR programme would be unable to sell their packaging in Maine. And a US federal bill was published in February 2020. The bill for the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act 2020 looks to make producers of packaging responsible for financing the collection and recycling of packaging by joining a compliance organisation. So that's actually quite a lot of information to digest from one slide. You'll have a brief moment now as I pass you across to James, who will introduce you to EC4P